Light is on, it's just very, very dim. Okay, that's interesting. We will go ahead and get started with our study session on most exciting of topics, gray water. Take it away, Director Workman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of City Council. I'll try and keep the terms as technical as possible with gray, brown, yellow, whatever the case may be. As was just mentioned, your study session this evening is a matter related to gray water. Back in 2024, in their infinite wisdom, the state legislature passed House Bill 1362, which was included as part of your packet. That state legislation basically says that gray water is allowed to be used in new construction, the caveat being new construction, unless a local organization prohibits it via either a resolution or an ordinance. And so that's what brings us here this evening, is to have a discussion with council and not receive direction, but get some head nods and some concurrence about which option to pursue. Before we get into some of the technical responses from our technical partners, gray water is this kind of abstract thing. And of course, the bill doesn't have a definition of what gray water is. But CDPHE, the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, provides some guidance on what they consider gray water. Gray water is essentially water that's been used once, in my own words, in a gentle way. So things like bathroom and laundry room sinks, bathtub showers, laundry machines. So basically, the most you would have in that type of water is some type of a soapy type product. Generally not chemicals, although you can, depending on cleaning agents and stuff like that. But what gray water excludes are what I would call dirty water, which are water from toilets, urinals, kitchen sinks, dishwashers, anything that may have the technical term waste associated with it. And gray water the reuse of it does have obviously a pro of potentially having water conservation impacts, right? The more you reuse that type of water, the less new water you're getting from either aquifers or from reservoirs or things of that nature. But there also are some cons, and those cons were spelled out in your staff report. There are potential health risks associated with gray water use when there's cross-contamination between a traditional system and a gray water system. There are potential environmental risks when, let's say, the water would daylight into a yard or to something that's organic, right? You could potentially have issues with chemicals being introduced into the soil and to plant material. And then there's also maintenance issues. Generally speaking, these systems run a whole gamut from complex to not so complex, but they all are kind of complex in their own way. And so they do need to be maintained. They need to be taken care of. Otherwise, there can result in failures of the system or clogging of the system. So as we were doing our research related to this legislation, we reached out to our technical partners to get their input on it. Cherry Hills Village Sanitation District, which is a sanitation district that serves quite a bit of the city here, they would advocate for its prohibition, noting that gray water helps move the waste through the sewer system. Current wastewater treatment facilities are not designed or capable of handling the additional concentration of the waste without the gray water. And Icon Engineering, the city's engineering consultant, also advocated for prohibition, saying that there's no real benefit to the city's infrastructure for gray water use because some of those things we've talked about where the water would help push that waste through the system. Without that, there's not a real benefit to the city's infrastructure. And then Schumskota, the building consultant, who would do the review of these types of systems and then ultimately the initial inspection and sign off on those. They would also advocate for the prohibition, and they had a whole laundry list of reasons. But primarily, their concern would be that gray water systems can create cross-contamination when the connections aren't done appropriately or they're not maintained appropriately. It can create nuisance conditions and then pathogen exposure when there's not adequate maintenance. We also looked at a couple of surrounding jurisdictions, and I do want to note there are some jurisdictions that allow for gray water usage. I don't want to dismiss and say that everybody's prohibiting it because there are some jurisdictions that would allow for it. But the specifics of those regulations are so specific to those individual communities that to put a 25-page document in front of you that goes through their gray water requirements is not going to be useful for the conversation. But I did want to note of the jurisdictions we looked at, two that prohibited it late last year, one Arapahoe County and the city of Greenwood Village, both citing public health concerns. So with that, we are here to get feedback from council in which direction council desires to move on this topic. The first option, which would be staff's recommended option, would be to come back at a date here in the near future with an ordinance that would prohibit the use of gray water. The other option is we could certainly proceed with an ordinance to create standards for gray water usage. That probably just wouldn't be as quick because we'd have to get technical partners involved and find out what exactly would be appropriate for a community with our type of residential development. And that concludes my presentation, but certainly here to answer any questions or facilitate a discussion.
All right, I know I have some questions, but it looks like other people do. Yeah, we'll start down here.
Thank you. Made the topic very easy to understand. Just one question, really. Are there any groups that are advocating for a gray water standard in the city? Residents, builders, trade associations, NGOs?
None that I'm aware of in the village. And during my time here, we've never had a request for a gray water system.
do you recall, maybe I lied, two questions.
That's okay.
When the legislation passed, who was pushing it? Was it the environmental groups or?
That's my recollection. I'd have to go back and look at some notes, but that's my recollection.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Robbins?
Yes, a couple of questions. So first is it possible technically to have a gray water system for an individual home or for a few homes?
It is possible. There can be expense associated with that, but yes, it is possible. You do bring up an interesting point where most of the time the gray water option is available in commercial and industrial sites, but there are residential technologies that you can use for your home.
Okay, all right. And then isn't it true that at the, forgetting the new name of the plant, the sewer facility, that the first thing they do is after they screen out any solid things, they will separate the solid from the water, from the liquid, and they run that through a series of cleansing and treatment and so on, and eventually will put that water back into water supply. So the conservation argument, it doesn't hold as much with me because
Doesn't hold water?
because I think that water the intent is to recycle as much of that water as possible. Do you have any insight into that?
I can't speak to that specifically, but I can tell you an experience with water centers, I guess for lack of a better term. Usually one of the first things they do is they separate the solids from the liquids. The solids then become some sort of a fertilizer for agricultural uses, and then the water gets purified to a certain level deemed appropriate by either the state or the EPA or whoever, that then goes back into some type of a natural water system.
Yeah, that's my understanding too. So they either dispose or fertilize or incinerate, I think also.
That could be.
The solid, but I think the
Sludge, I think, is the technical term. Yeah.
sludge, yeah.
Yeah, to
Another
that,
name for it starts with a P, I won't mention.
to that point, Doug, and it's interesting because what this system was is, individual gray water systems within houses, but there are some municipalities and jurisdictions in the country that have pretty extensive gray water systems, one of which I'm familiar with, is in St. Petersburg, Florida. And in fact, they don't separate those. Everything goes in the one pipe. The dirty water and the gray water, whatever water you want to call it, it goes to. But then it at the processing plant, it separates out at that point in time in terms of going through a process where they clean up the water, and then that water there's a separate piping system all throughout the city. They're purple pipes. It's interesting, so that that's then utilized for landscaping only. And it's interesting because, St. Petersburg is a relatively large city. I mean, the point is in Florida, it's got water problems, and there are oftentimes rationing restrictions on water, and people's lawns are just brown. Not in St. Petersburg. It's as green as you can see. It's like an oasis in the desert because all that water comes back and only for irrigation purposes. And it's a really, really extensive system. So it was interesting just to kind of, pass that on.
Mayor,
Yeah,
Pro Tem,
and
go ahead.
I was just going to say, the city doesn't have a system like that, but there are systems like that here in the Front Range. If you ever are at a park or a recreational place and you see the purple valve boxes, that's what that purple indicates, is it's water that's been cleaned to a certain point, but it's not fit for consumption.
Drinking.
The purple pipe is post-treatment water. The gray water is pre-treatment separation. So it's really post and pre-treatment. So, yeah, I've worked in a couple of jurisdictions that have the purple pipe here in the metro area. That's a big investment front end. But that's more of a municipal-led effort, whereas this legislation is really trying to, allow individual efforts.
Councilor Fisher?
So, first of all, it was kind of hard to read it without kind of going like that some of the time. I don't know if anybody else had that experience, but so thank you. So thinking about the communities that have, adopted some sort of gray water program, I think that's Fort Collins, right? Maybe.
I believe they're on the
somewhere,
list. I
yeah.
believe that to be correct.
Like maybe just for toilet flushing or whatever. If in the future, what would prevent us from changing? And I mean, we don't even have that many new homes going in, but, if it really became if we had a lot more years like this year, and maybe some water rationing, would it be difficult?
Yeah, the short version is, at that time, the council would direct to create a set of standards and adopt an ordinance that would implement the ability to use gray water. And, yeah, it would repeal and replace it.
So I think, I think my thoughts are along this train, which are that maybe a little further down that line. Obviously, we live in a desert. Water is a very valued commodity in our community. We want to encourage recycling. All of the reasons that I read in the memos and everything that was provided seem like reasons why a person might not want to do this if they were building a new home, for example. And, I'm just thinking to my own experience, having babies and whatever, I'm not so sure that laundry sink is that much cleaner than a toilet. But anyway, so these all came across to me as reasons why an individual might not want to do it. But if there are people who want to and feel strongly about that, why would we tell them they can't? And I noticed, I know that Icon said it doesn't provide any benefit to the city's infrastructure, but it doesn't really seem to hurt the city's infrastructure either, except I guess maybe unless you used it to water your lawn or something, then it wouldn't go. But if you use it just to flush toilets, it goes into that system anyway. It just gets used twice before it goes into that system. And so I guess I'm wondering, and I know it would take considerable work on our part to craft standards and et cetera. And likely, if I had to guess, I'd say if we saw one or two, maybe that would feel like a lot. So I don't know if the work, but I don't feel great about prohibiting people from who want to be environmentally conscious. I don't feel great about prohibiting them from doing that.
Let me see if I can jump in on that comment, Mayor. The question you have, though, I think is when you have potential pathogens in water, and, the question is, does the system work? And I guess that was going to be one of my questions is, if I as an individual want to install a system at my house, I think I want, as the owner of the house, I want to make sure that it's working so that my kids that are playing in the low end of the house yard don't get inundated with, bad things. But at the same time, I guess the question that you really have is then kind of on the regulatory side, are those places that do have it? I'm assuming Tampa probably does it as a gigantic project, but are we going to be regulating quality at every house? Is that kind of how, because my house is new, so it has this system. 3 houses over.
Well, you wouldn't,
Two
it's
of them
only
might
for
have
new, it's only
something.
new construction.
Well, no,
so,
but
yeah.
I'm saying a rebuild or a remodel
Yeah.
could be that way too. But all I'm saying is that you're going to have unequal treatment across houses. And I guess this idea, I didn't mean unequal treatment like that, but, I'm kind of envisioning this to be sort of like solar, that some houses have it and some don't. Some will have gray water systems and some don't. And I'm not really sure the mechanics. Do we have systems that are out there that work for individual property owners and that we know treat water to the standards that would render it safe for disposal?
I don't know that I can answer the second part of that question as we sit here because we don't have standards or regulations. But there are other communities that have standards or regulations that have allowed it. So I would make the assumption that it's possible, yes.
So they figured out what in essence is a safe level for this pathogen to be in water, let's say. I would think that they would have had to go
Or
through
like,
that. Well, it's probably the safe drinking water standards or the groundwater injection standards.
I think our regulations would have to be something like, it has to be certified every year, and it has to,
Right.
it would be things like that. And if there are, and it would be on a property by property basis, and I would imagine the regulations would be that you can only use that gray water on your own property, and it can't,
Yeah, there would be a number of sort of laundry list items like that that would
Right.
be included in a customized
It would
version
have to be,
for us.
wouldn't it, because your gray water system is just on your property?
Correct.
Yeah, but
Not
we
like
all
you
know
have
that,
A separate pipeline like Tampa does, right? So it
Correct.
all have to be.
No, for a single-family home, right now, the plumbing in your home, in most homes, connects to the sewer pipe system and eventually makes it to a water treatment facility. What a gray water system does is it separates that dirty water, right, the toilets and the urinals and that still goes to the sewer system and then through the treatment plant. What the gray water system does is it's an individual system that collects when your sink in the bathroom turns on. It collects that water, stores it, and then reuses it for the next time you wash your hands.
And I don't know that we would say we have to come out and inspect it, because we don't go out and inspect anything else at a house. We don't look at their sewer system at a house to make sure it's operating
that's true.
properly, or their electrical, or
I mean,
their
that's true.
elevators, as I learned.
Elevators, we do,
Oh, I
yes.
thought just the first time, I thought you told me they don't go back every year.
For
In
commercial,
residential.
we do. For residential,
No,
we
that's
do
what-
not.
Yeah,
But we're
for
talking
residential.
Yeah.
I was about to say, really? Because we have an elevator and it hasn't been inspected ever, to my knowledge. I was like,
You're
uh-oh.
not.
If I might, real quick, since 2016, only a few dozen systems have been permitted statewide. 30 of those were in one subdivision in Castle Rock, where it looks like the subdivider or the builder put those systems in place because there was a 33% reduction in tap fees from the city. But since 2016, there's less than 50 in the
that's
entire
kind of related
state.
to my question. It sounds like one of the disadvantages of doing it is it impedes the flow of the sewer system if you lose that gray water in it. How many homes does it take to have that detrimental impact? mean,
I would have to
per year.
defer to the sewer district for that. They would, because it's all going to depend on the number of fixtures and the pipe size, and so the sewer district may have a better answer for that.
The
but-
sewer district's comments were interesting because I don't know if this was taken like verbatim from what they said, so maybe perhaps it was like misinterpreted, but it says, gray water flows, parenthesis, the water associated with a toilet flushing or a sink running, it's not associated with a toilet flushing. That's not gray water.
Correct.
Help move solids waste through the sewer system. So, you know, I think my point is that that water still goes through, well, depending on how you use the gray water, and that we could put regulations, right? It can be used to flush toilets, period,
Well, that was my,
right?
that was
Then
my,
it still, then it goes into that system still.
yeah, that was my next question. Can you differentiate that way? Because your example of using it to flush toilets, the gray water is one thing, but what about the rest in the home? Can you prohibit that if it does have a detrimental impact on? Yeah.
Like, I don't think you'd want people drinking it.
I think you
It's-
can. I think Fort Collins only allows it for toilet and urinal flushing.
Yeah.
I looked it up. That was my understanding. But
Not
I'm,
for landscaping, though?
no,
Because that wouldn't be safe. You know, if you put bleach in your laundry with your whites, then you'd be,
Well, I wouldn't want my
Bleaching
grandchild
your-
crawling around that grass.
right.
I did notice that you're not allowed to use gray water in your bidet, so.
Oh, yeah, because
careful.
yes, okay.
be careful.
Well, that makes sense, right? Okay, so,
I'm okay with prohibiting it for now. I mean, I know we're not voting on this, but you know, I think if it becomes, if they perfect the systems and people are starting to have a lot of luck with it and really, I mean, I wish we could use it for firefighting. On a windy day, a windy, warm day like today, right?
yeah.
I'm okay with prohibiting it for now, though. I agree with staff's recommendation.
I mean, I think that the question that I have is that, you know, maybe on an individualized basis, I just don't know that this technology is quite ready for prime time, I guess I'd say. It seems to me that there are a whole lot of questions out there that, on larger lots in Cherry Hills Village, and I guess I'm a little curious about how Fort Collins does it, but if they can only use it where it's used within the house, that may answer my question. Is larger properties, it kind of, to me, seems something akin to like a septic leaching field, that it cleans itself as it is percolating to the point that it then doesn't run off to a neighbor's house and cause a problem or a standard that's too high.
I think you can only, if you're using it in irrigation, and what I read, it has to be underground irrigation.
that-
You can't,
Correct.
you can't spray it.
Yeah, no spraying,
Yeah.
but it could be weep hoses or whatever. But the point is, water that goes, things percolate through groundwater. I mean,
But we could, I mean, we wouldn't have to allow that. We could say it's
But-
just for toilet flushing.
and so
But-
my comment to you is, I share Karen's comment that I think we're not quite ready for prime time on some of this. While I think it can be done safely on some of our lots, our larger lots, I just don't know the science enough about our smaller lots in the village, and our smaller lots are actually large compared to a lot of other cities, obviously. But I guess that's kind of where I am, and I think there's I'll just note that I have no doubt that somewhere somebody is already doing this in the village. Some environmentalist is already out there, and they're grabbing their sink water and using it on the rose bushes or whatever. I mean,
So I have a question. Do we have a need or a requirement to either say we're going to prohibit it or accept it? Or what if we just didn't do anything? What is the requirement? Go ahead.
So if we don't prohibit it, we do have to come up with all of the regulations, all of the, outline everything, and then we have to notify Denver Water, all the sewer districts, the state. So, and then every time we permit it, Denver Water will want to inspect it for cross-contamination, and the state will also. But yeah, we have to do one or the other.
have to do one or the other,
And if
so-
we don't
We
prohibit
could
it,
prohibit
then
it
we,
today, and
then we-
then
yeah,
if
then we-
the technology improves and so on, we could we could change it later.
Similar to other legislation, the default is they're assuming we're going to allow it. We have to take positive action to prohibit
So-
it.
And allowing it without any regulation in place is the kind of, which is where, that's the do-nothing case, and that's a bad idea.
I think the only thing that might make us maybe want to reconsider it is if, say, the golf courses came to us, or the schools that have large tracts of land came to us and said, we want to start using gray water, then it might be worth looking at it again. Just because they're such big users of water.
Or as Karen said, if drought conditions
Yeah,
persist in a
yeah.
severe way.
But I'm okay with right now. I mean, it sounds like we're all in consensus that we ought to go ahead and proceed with an ordinance to prohibit.
Okay,
Okay?
that's perfect. That's what we were looking for. Thank you for the discussion. We'll be back before you on this topic.
Thank you.
All right, well, we have 5 minutes before the meeting starts, if anybody needs to take a break or do anything else. Go, yeah. Go create some gray water. All right. It is 6:30, and I will call the city council meeting to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Counselor Heller,
Here.
Counselor Eber,
Here.
Counselor Holan,
Here.
Counselor McGuire,
Here.
Counselor Robinson,
Here.
Counselor Fisher.
Here. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Audience participation. Seeing none, and no members of city boards or commissions, we'll move to the consent agenda.
And I move approval of consent agenda item 6A.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Moving on to unfinished business, at Quincy Farm Visiting. We'll turn it over to Manager Black.
So I'm actually just going to kick things off.
Oh,
for
okay, or
just-
City Manager Kramer.
Just a brief few words before handing it off to Manager Black. So just as a reminder, this is in the packet, and I'm sure you all can't forget it because it was so much fun. In May 20th of last year was the last time we had a discussion about the Quincy Farm visioning process. And at that time, there was a discussion to basically hit pause for just a little bit and direction from council to staff to bring it back early this year. And that's really what we're trying to kick off tonight. So here it is. And, we are treating this conversation and the next two really as an extension of the previous process. It's one big, giant process. So we're not attempting to, and you'll hear tonight from Manager Black about how we are trying to pick up from where we left off last time with trying to get council to agree on certain things that we've agreed upon and not agreed upon. But this is going to be, and I'm sure I'm reiterating what you've already all read, but this is just part one tonight, and we're really setting the table for parts 2 and 3, which are going to be in April and May. Tonight, we are really just trying to get your buy-in on a few basics to get the ball rolling. The big heavy lift are going to come in part 2 and part 3. Does that sound good? And I know I said some of what you were going to say, but that's okay.
That's just fine.
All right, Manager Black.
Okay. I have a disclaimer too. So before I jump in, this isn't going to be my typical presentation where I go through the whole thing and then hand it off to council for discussion. I have designed it more as an exercise that we'll go through together. So basically there are pause points designed in the presentation. We'll pause, we'll discuss that portion of it and move on. Just to give you a little preview, I'm not going to run through the whole thing. So I'll kick it off with a little bit of history and how we got here. So really the first foundational vision document for Quincy Farm came in 2014 out of the Quincy Farm Visioning Committee and their hard work. Following that committee, we had the Quincy Farm Committee. They completed additional work towards a master plan, but that master plan was never completely finished. And then council added this visioning task to the 2025 Quincy Farm Annual Plan to kind of pick up where some of those previous visioning efforts left off because there is no formal vision adopted for the farm as of right now. So as part of that visioning work that we did last year, the Quincy Farm team reviewed all that prior work from the Quincy Farm Committee, Visioning Committee, the CHLP Strategic Roadmap. We also conducted interviews with individual counselors and did research into similar local properties. You might remember there was a chart that we presented to all of, or that was attached in the packet at that May 20th meeting about that. And then on May 20th of last year, we had a lengthy discussion with City Council where we did make progress, which we'll go into in a little bit. And then we went ahead and included visioning again in this 2026 annual plan. So this is our anticipated schedule. Tonight is really a roadmap going through what's been done, what's been agreed on. I'll go into more detail on the next slide. And then following tonight's discussion, like Chris said, the April 7th meeting is really going to be the meaty one, where we'll bring all of the detail that council might request, cost estimates, background, history, all that good stuff. And the Quincy Farm team's plan is to present 3 or 4 vision options basically to council so that we have sort of some concrete options to discuss and you can give us direction, you know, blend A and B, that type of thing. But really just to provide a starting point at that meeting. And then at the May 5th meeting to really make a decision on which of those visions or which combination of visions we'll be going with. So for tonight's meeting, we have 3 main goals. The first is to establish elements of the vision that council has already agreed upon that we don't have to discuss further, that we don't need to bring more, you know, details about a structure, for example, to council, because that's been settled. The second would be to determine items that still need to be discussed during the following meetings. And I have a list of those coming up. And then the third, to establish a shared understanding of next steps, which hopefully we're starting to check that one off already. So moving right into goal 1. This is the list of items that we discussed at the May 20th council meeting that we, the Quincy Farm team, think there was pretty good consensus from council about. But we wanted to present them to you tonight to make sure that that's a correct assumption. The first are changes to the key principles. I'm actually going to stick a pin in that one because we have the key principles in the next slide. The second is, 2 through 6 are really concepts that are going to go into the vision. So the fact that CHLP programming is allowed on both sides of the farm, that city events are appropriate on both sides of the farm, that visiting animals are welcome on both sides. We think we've established that private events are appropriate on the east side, and that small private events should be permitted in the Hopkins house. So all of these impressions are based on discussion that we re-listened to from that May 20th meeting. But if we've missed the mark on any of these, this is the time to talk it through.
And just, because I'd get the houses confused, the Hopkins house is the old farmhouse on the west side that faces Quincy.
Yes, it's the smallest one closest to the street.
And yeah, and perhaps the most important of the houses in terms of the way the conservation easement treats them.
One question, if I might, Mayor.
Yeah.
So on principle 5, I think it could be read 2 different ways. Private events appropriate on the east side. I thought there were some limitations that we were talking about, even on both sides, east and west.
Yes,
So
so
this
this
is-
isn't the full detail.
Yeah, understood, but I just
okay.
want to make that clarification, that we might agree with the high-level principle. Private events are appropriate on the east side, but there's still maybe some conditions or limitations.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Okay.
And Mayor, if I could,
Yes.
just confirming number 4, what I think we all know, but when you say visiting animals, you're excluding dogs and cats and domestic type. I mean, because there's no dogs that are allowed on the property right now, is my understanding. You can't take your dog there.
Correct. Right now, the rules are that you can't bring dogs.
But we're saying under this, even dogs would be allowed on the farm?
No, I think this is, these are just broad concepts that it would be nice to have farm animals or goats or
Well,
horses.
that's where I was just
or-
going to
yeah,
clarify. I would have said
Visiting
visiting
farm
farm
animals,
animals.
So is this consistent with the event that we had last year where we had the raptors on the west side? And
Yes,
so it's intended to accommodate that, not for people to bring their goats or something over to the farm randomly or something like that, right?
that's correct. I think most of our discussion was associating this with programming.
Yeah, this isn't intended to allow people to leave their goats for a week. for free grazing.
Yeah.
No, this is in conjunction with a program of some kind.
Because that was a question I had too with regard to visiting, and it depends on the definition. And what I'm hearing here is that animals that visit as part of a program
Yeah, that's
is
probably
what
it
we're
as part
talking
of the
about. So it's
program.
probably visiting is programmatic
Yes.
animals, right? I mean,
Gosh, I almost hate to say it, but in theory, if someone were to do animal training as a program, then you might have dogs, right? But not dogs coming as pets just to be walked on the property. So I think tying it to programming is probably the right way to do it. I think that's interesting. I'm not saying we would allow that, but
Okay, and I think the one thing that it's not necessarily specific to these principles, but feedback to everything you've just presented. Very early on, you said that there's no vision adopted. That's not entirely true. The original visioning document was adopted.
actually,
Or no,
Mayor,
it was
it's
not?
not. It never was. It was presented to council. You were on council.
Okay, yeah,
and,
at the time.
And it was presented, and it was discussed at length, and nothing, the minutes showed nothing was ever adopted, nothing was ever,
Did it need to be voted on, or did it need, I mean, it was
well,
the,
from the standpoint of council adopting that vision, it would have needed to have been. But the point is, the visioning committee completed its work, did its work, and presented its work to council. Full stop. That's what happened.
okay.
And then that led, at that meeting, actually, and that led to then a discussion about forming the Quincy Farm Committee.
Right.
Which then a couple meetings down the road happened.
So I guess and I could be wrong, I'd have to go back, but my recollection from, as you pointed out, I was on council at the time. Perhaps there wasn't an official vote on it, but I don't think there was any, I think there was agreement with the committee and there was no controversy over the document presented by the visioning committee. So I would argue that there was a vision established, maybe adopted is not the right word. A vision created, presented, created, whatever the right word is. And I just, because I know that where we are now and where we are really going to try to go with this is not to go back to square one and balance that with the fact that we have, over the decades, there are always new voices and new opinions, and that's the way this works. But I think it's important that everybody be up to speed on all the work that has come before so that we don't end up relitigating lots of different things.
And Mayor, I guess I'm just going to add on to this. It's not exactly the point you're making, but it's related. If council, on April 7th said, you know what, we like the visioning committee's vision, let's just use that one. Let's just adopt that one. We are taking, as staff, and I'm not speaking on behalf of the committee really, even just as staff, we are taking a different approach than we did last time. It's probably obvious at this point. Last time, on May 20th of 2025, we presented a recommended vision, including a bunch of details related that was on the matrix. And we probably didn't get across the finish line with that approach. So this time around, staff really isn't making a recommendation. So should you want to go with that vision, and I don't think that's what you're suggesting, but my point is.
Well, I don't know.
Well, maybe, whatever. We
The more I read that
That's
document,
the way-
I'm like, why aren't we just doing that?
we're going to support whichever direction council
Yeah.
wants to go. We are not really going to be putting out a recommendation in the same way as last time.
Thanks, okay.
So I have a quick question
Yeah.
too. Is that, just on numbers 5 and 6, and maybe this is just wording, but maybe it's not, private events appropriate on the east side. Are they inappropriate on the west side, but still allowed?
That's next. Those are the points that there is no consensus on. These are the things that we did agree on.
We didn't agree on the west side. There was disagreement on the west side.
Yes, and that's going to be on the next slide, I think.
So agreed. I see. So we haven't even
Yes.
talked about the west side, because the west side really depends on the next conversation, maybe not tonight, but about what we do with the main house, the Anderson
Yes.
house, right?
Yes.
And I
So-
think we did agree, number 6, that, we didn't agree what small meant or what have you, but that there could be events at the Hopkins house, which is on the west side.
Yes.
Right. Okay, thank you.
So I think, it sounds like everyone is in agreement that we agreed on
Yep.
these things. Yes,
Subject-
Councilor Heller.
Subject to further Paretoing down.
Yeah,
But one
broad
other-
strokes.
Yeah,
Yes,
but one
broad
other
strokes.
question, if I might, and it might be coming up on a slide that I don't know about, or it might not even be relevant, but I'm going to ask it anyways. I recall last year, we talked about CHLP's desire to be more focused on programming as opposed to capital fundraising and the like. Is that still the case, and is that baked in here somehow?
So it's not baked into this visioning discussion, but there is another section in the 2026 annual plan, by design meant to come after the visioning exercise, where we will revisit the MOU that we have with CHLP and refine it to make sure that it reflects what the city's needs are now and what CHLP is interested in providing the city.
Okay, that answers
So
my
that
question.
is coming up on the horizon after this visioning
Okay.
exercise.
Very
Yeah,
well.
I guess to that point too, should just generally say that programming is allowed on both, whether it's done by CHLP or the city or some other partner that the city chooses or whatever, but
Thank you.
I do have a question, sorry.
yes.
I also agree that this is what we agreed on, but I do have a question for you, Manager Black. There are events allowed, first of all, should we call it the main house or the Anderson house? Because it still comes up both ways. That's one question.
I think for clarity's sake, calling it the Anderson House going forward would be
Okay.
helpful.
So there are currently events allowed in the Anderson house, correct?
Technically, we have a policy on the books that allows them. We haven't actually had a reservation for that house in years.
Okay, so I just sort of wondered why that is still on the website with a lot of, like, you can, book it here, it's just cost $25 permit fee and, no more than 40 people and you can't move the piano and, stuff like that. Because we didn't really discuss that before.
Oh, I'm sorry. Council approved that
Yeah.
years ago.
Okay.
So it's really still in effect because council hasn't given different direction, but
Okay,
happy to change that if there's a desire to take that down and change the ability to have it available.
okay, that's not what I was suggesting, I just wanted to clarify. Okay, thank you.
Yes. And that's kind of what I was referring to when I'm talking about there was a direction. We did start moving down that direction. If this council wants to move in a different direction, that's okay, but there is a direction.
I think that is true, et cetera, but the reality is that a lot of water has
Yes.
gone under the bridge. What kind of water?
Is it
What
gray?
kind of water?
Is it
Gray
brown?
water? What
Is
kind
it-
of water? There was the visioning committee report, there's the Quincy Farm Master Plan, which was never completed. There's the charter amendment issue that occurred a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
There was issues where we had a lot of interaction in a competitive way, I'll use that word, with COL. We've then had the CHLP programming experience. There's been a lot of things that have changed over a period of time where a lot of information and data has come. And so from that perspective, it's like going, okay, are we at a point where we're going, you know what? We now have a pretty good feel for the pitfalls, the issues, the this, the that. Is it time to do this? And I actually think that's what council said, not in that way, but I think council as a group has said, hey, we do need to get down the road. From my perspective, that's why I think it's important to get down the road, because we do have all of this information, all of this experiences, some good, some bad, that have basically laid sort of a foundation and a groundwork for kind of where we are. Interaction with neighbors, again, it's over and over and over again. A lot of water and experiences have happened. So that's kind of what I see.
All right, I think, so we are in agreement that we agree on these things.
Excellent. Thank you. So this is.
Said it couldn't be done.
This is referencing that first bullet point on the last slide. These are the key principles as edited by council at that May 20th meeting last year. So again, just wanted to pop these up in front of everyone to make sure that these still stand. These are really meant to be guiding statements to support the vision and support decision-making for the next meeting as well.
Just a
Yep.
question. Does nature include wildlife? Should that be called out separately, or is it included within nature? Because I think with the effort we're making on the pond and with animals that we just talked about and so on, that maybe that is worth mentioning in addition to nature, or maybe it's included in that. I just bring that up.
I think typically it's included in that umbrella of nature. But if you'd like to call it out, there's no harm in doing that.
Personally, I don't want to change any words.
Well, you're not going to like me because I have a suggestion. coming,
Okay,
but-
Counselor Heller, so Counselor Robinson has one, Counselor Heller, yep.
Yeah, so the private events may be permitted. It seems to me there's a couple words missing from this, which is, and I don't know how to say it correctly, but respecting the character of the village, surrounding neighborhoods. You know, it's protecting the property. We're talking about in conformance with the grant, but it doesn't say anything about, again, the character, the nature of the village, and especially the surrounding properties. This may get to the event issue, et cetera. It seems to me that's a key principle for a property such as this. And it doesn't really say
Well, I
that.
think I don't know that there was a lot of agreement on that. I know that was a subject of conversation, maybe not in that exact term, but
Yeah, my statement
I
now is a
don't
little bit
know that-
broader, though. It's not getting you the
Yeah.
specifics. It's just that the principle, I think, as stewards of the village is,
Yeah, I guess, and again, and it's a good point. I mean, again, and where Emily, I think, is looking at here is that these things, and again, don't read into the words. Are these words accurate where they are? That doesn't mean there aren't going to be more words coming where there could be lots of discussion and debate. And so private events may, not will, may be permitted in a way that is consistent with the vision of the property, limit impact, blah, 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 made some access. And I recall, and that's why the conservation easement was above that, because you could have shoved that in there. Now, you're bringing up something that is interesting in terms of going, does it need to be consistent with the master plan? Character of the village probably starts to, get.
yeah, those might be the
get
wrong
different
words,
view.
but you get the point.
But yeah, I can certainly understand the master plan aspect, but I don't know that that bullet point is inaccurate in terms of where council was. And also not to say that more will and probably will be coming, but it's not there yet.
So wait, you don't think that this key principle reflects what we
I
discussed?
think it does. No,
Oh, you think it does?
No, I think it
Okay.
does. That's what I'm saying. It doesn't
Yes.
say that more may be coming on future slides and future dates.
I think more detail, but I don't think we're going to rework the key principles.
Right.
So, okay.
That's what yeah.
When you say more may be coming, I'm like, not about this principle. We may put some detail around it, but,
I disagree. I think we did discuss this concept. We didn't agree on it.
right. Well,
And,
that's,
but that was a very specific discussion. So I am advocating that this principle be modified. I think it is missing a key point. It's not saying, events of this size, we'll get to that detail, but it is saying that a principle is we should, respect the character of the surrounding neighborhoods and the village.
But I think, at least from my perspective, and by the way, more could be coming. I mean, for instance, we get down the road, we get down April, all of a sudden someone says, and the council says, we're going to do this. Okay, and everybody's going, yeah, and somebody, me maybe, might go, we got to go back and just change the wording on the key principle because it's not consistent. Which is not to say you don't want to do this. But when we start getting into the details, it could conceivably change these by definition. It will almost have to, depending upon what those things are that we do. But as of,
That's a little bit of my argument.
well, I know,
actually.
but see, but as of right now, and before Emily gets to, I mean, she's got
Yeah.
other stuff coming here. Before she gets there, it's like, okay, without more, does this reflect, again, where council is? And I think it does.
So just to clarify one thing, so this is an exercise, these came out of an exercise that Emily and Manager Black and I did, where we went back and listened, and on the key principles, there was, compared to the other parts of the recording, there was a fair amount of clarity. It was discussed, but I do think that this part actually was easier for us to kind of work our way through. With that said, though, there's absolutely nothing stopping council from amending or changing what these say tonight or in the future. We only wanted to reflect what we thought we heard from council from May 20th. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me if we were to add the language in the phrase limit impact to the farm, if we said limit impact to the farm and surrounding neighborhoods,
That works.
I think that,
Yeah.
and I mean, that obviously was an issue that was brought up.
Well, it has been
Where
over
did
the
we end
years,
up? I don't
too.
recall where we ended up in the, but.
Well, I do, again, that ends up being overly broad. Public land and where it intersects with private property and abuts private property there's always a rub. There's a rub here at John Mead Park with these neighbors. There's a rub around the amphitheater that was created there. There's a rub. It's always a rub.
Yeah.
And so I think if your key principle is to limit the impact on the surrounding community, if that is a key principle that you're going to limit the impact, I think that's going to steer you in a very narrow direction.
Maybe
But
limit's
it's
the
not
wrong
saying there
word.
won't be no impact.
Well,
It's not
minimize,
saying,
again, that's gonna steer you in a
Or
very,
respect,
Are we
or-
talking about traffic primarily?
or
It could be-
noise
it
traffic,
could be
I
noise,
mean,
traffic.
Noise traffic.
parking, I
Parking,
don't
yeah.
know but if your key principle is to minimize that, well,
now limit is different than minimize.
okay, well, I've heard minimized or not, I've heard limit again. That's a very narrow lane. If your goal, right, I mean, I had this conversation with someone else. My goal when I come into a council meeting is not to make the meeting as short as possible. Obviously, it would be great for it to be efficient, but my goal isn't to limit the time that we spend in meetings. And I think establishing as a key principle that we have to limit the impact of the farm because we're required to do that as part of the conservation easement. So that's sort of a given. When you say limit impact to the surrounding community, that is incredibly broad. The surrounding community and the city can be impacted in an infinite number of ways. And if the goal is to limit that, then the obvious outcome is just to do nothing. That's how you limit it the most.
Well, but, all right, maybe considering the impact. I mean,
Or is consistent with, we can pull out the thesaurus. I think there's a word that probably balances, Mayor, your concern, which is valid. And again, I just think this is a key principle, part of a key principle.
or maybe it's with consideration given to the impact of the surrounding. I mean, the fact of the matter is we are going to, the fact of the matter is we are going to put some limits. For example, we've already talked about, we wouldn't let events go until 2:00 in the morning. We would be, we've talked about limiting how many people. Those are limits. It's not saying there will be no impact, but it's a consideration will be given to the impact on the surrounding neighborhoods. Maybe is that something that makes you more comfortable?
I don't know, because I ultimately think this is the crux of the disagreement. And so I think we're now putting the crux of the disagreement into the key principle.
But the way I think of it, Mayor, is that it's this recognizing, and Susan, you basically said this, that there are parameters that will be considered. It's not telling us what those parameters are. We have to decide that later. Are we going to allow, a 1,000-slot parking lot, weddings at 2 o'clock in the morning? Those are all, I'm not intending to drive us on those, but recognize, as Susan said, there are factors. And that is a principle. I mean, we have a character to our community. And Quincy Farm is a unique jewel, but shouldn't it be at least, in line with the character of the community?
Mayor, let me see if I can jump in and make the comment that if you wanted to say, and keep the language the same as it currently exists, you say that it's consistent with the vision for the property. Well, the vision for the property has always been that it must act within the overall scheme of the community. So I think that, these key principles seem to be asking us for what is going to go actually on the piece of property versus the off-site impacts that could be going on. But the vision for the property, I think, is never to have an event that we do not, overrun the surrounding neighborhoods or cause that. I think that fits within the vision of the property, is that the vision of the property, it's only used for a certain degree of event. So you could leave the language alone
I think you're
still
actually-
get to some of the details
You're
that I
raising
think Doug is answering.
You're raising a point that I had not considered before, which is the vision of what is consistent with the vision of the property. Like, we don't know what the vision of the property or the vision for the property is. How could we be consistent with it? Because now it's reminding me of the semi-rural character debate, right?
Maybe this key principle shouldn't be in here because there is so much disagreement around it. I mean, we do have, in the point above it, program activities and site improvements will comply with the conservation easement. That doesn't prohibit private events. I mean, maybe this shouldn't be a key principle.
Well, I think it was an attempt to, we're going to have to decide whether, if, how, et cetera, private events, it has to be decided. Yeah.
Well-
Hold on, Director Black,
Emily-
let's look.
Oh, sorry. I think it might be useful. This has all been informative, so thank you. I think that the best thing for us to do might be to take this last key principle out and bring it in conjunction with some of the other items that we'll be presenting on April 7th, because it kind of dovetails with that discussion. So
Having caused this morass, that works for me as it does for everybody else.
Well, I just wanted to say one thing, though, because I do think this is important, and it's like the middle sentence is the issue that we're debating right now. But one of the things that was, I think, agreed to, which is to go, if there are private events on the farm, it will never exclude public access at that point in time. There will always be public access to the farm, even if there's a private event going on. And I think that was something that was brought up and that everybody agreed to. So it's really that first sentence and that last part that's important, and it's the middle section that seems to be causing the issue. But I think that's the case at this point. Well, and maybe we ought to say that again. Do we think that the farm will never be closed to the public?
the extensive discussion at the last meeting resulted in that word "some" being added, because it originally had just maintained public access to the site. But
Yeah, that's
after
true.
further discussion,
Yep.
council decided, well, excuse me, if you were having an event on the east side, it might be reasonable to close the east side, but have the west side still be open.
Yes.
So that's where that.
I do remember that discussion, and I think there was agreement there that, because it originally was you know, you're having a birthday party on the east side and you have to let people walk through the middle of your birthday party. And I just remember having that
But
conversation.
I do agree with Manager Black's recommendation, because I think by tabling it, you're neither making the change and you're also not preventing the change. You're saying let that next discussion inform it, and then we can basically revisit
Then you
that.
can rewrite
and-
it.
And put it
Yeah,
back
I
into
think
the
that
key
makes sense.
principles at a future date.
I think that's right, but I'll leave you with a thought, and I think, Susan, you were getting close to this, that consistent with the vision for the property and the character of Cherry Hills Village, or something like that. It doesn't limit, just consistent with the character.
Yeah. Okay. 'Cause I don't know what that would be.
That's,
Okay.
that's part of it,
Yeah.
is staff is listening to this and they're taking notes. And
Yes.
so
Yes.
It's helpful in this regard, I think.
So it sounds like there is, you know, we cannot confirm that these are final key principles, and that we cannot confirm that there is consensus around the fourth key principle, but perhaps there are around the first three.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Okay, great. That means we've gotten through goal 1. So thank you all. Okay, so this is moving into our second goal for tonight, to determine what items still need to be discussed and solidified during these following 2 meetings. So this is a rundown of items that we think are major decisions that still need to be made. Our plan is to tailor the information we bring at that April 7th meeting to these specific questions. So the decisions we think are still outstanding, whether to allow weddings on either side of the farm, whether to allow outdoor private events on the west side, and what uses, if any, are desired in the Anderson House, informing what to do with the structure.
And why are weddings different than other private events with respect to the east side?
The logistics of holding a wedding are much more significant than really any other type of private event that we could host, in terms of staff, parking, resources.
But
Yeah, and I might just
a
add on-
birthday party where I wanted to invite 100 people and a wedding where I wanted to invite 100 people, I'm not sure.
I would argue that it's different. That's just my own personal, it's just my opinion.
I'm going to hire
But
a
there's-
caterer, I'm going to have a band. I'm
But,
gonna
but
have-
just one caterer and just
If
one band.
but I would say this is a topic that there is absolutely not agreement on.
I would agree,
Because-
but I'm just offering to you, this, everything we're presenting tonight is what we think we've heard from city council. This one topic, I have my own personal recommendation for city council. I do think there is a difference. And I think that's, I will say, listening to the previous conversation on May 20th, there definitely was separate discussion about weddings and that
Right.
distinguished it from birthday parties, et cetera. So I think that's really what we're trying to suggest, is that the future conversation on April 7th, there might be a discussion about outdoor private events on the west side, and that might be separate than the factors and the criteria that council wants to discuss related to weddings.
I do think, though, city manager, that and it's just, it's your experience, but it's not just your opinion. It's your opinion based on your experience that you've seen. And I think, and which is not universal and it's not broader than what it is, but it's like, it's based on your experience. I think that's an important thing that at some point you need to provide to council.
Two
Yeah,
things.
oh,
Oh,
sorry.
sorry.
I was going to say, if I can call on Director Goldie, who has experience managing.
But
wedding
we're not
venue,
going to
basically.
discuss weddings tonight. Thank you. We're going to discuss that in April, but there is not agreement
Yeah,
on.
can I say one thing?
on
there?
weddings, yes.
And I won't violate what you just said. I thought there actually was some consensus in May of last year that we would allow weddings. The question was, with what limitations? Am I misremembering?
I think so. I think there was a lot of disagreement, and some people, you know,
Does
I tend to see things the way Councilor McGuire sees it, that I think they're the same. Definitely, people thought they were different. And so we've just got to hash.
but
and
was
we're-
anybody advocating for an outright ban on weddings?
Yes, yes.
Oh, really? Okay.
So
Yes.
I
Actually, I thought you were, Dave.
I think there,
Sorry.
I was, but I thought I came around to the conversation that
Okay.
appropriate limitations.
I think the focus ought to be on events. And if events meet certain parameters, they're allowed, and if they have certain other parameters, they're not allowed. Because someone's going to come and say, I want to have a birthday party, and it's going to have all the exact same things that they might have at a wedding. And we're going to say, yeah, that's okay, but you can't call it a wedding. You know, or what if they say, well, we're not going to call it a wedding, we're going to call it a party. I just think it gets weird, and that we ought to really focus on what are the parameters that are or aren't acceptable, regardless of what you call it. But
I agree.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Jay, what you were going to, yeah, Director.
Well, I don't want to step on the mayor's toes. For the first 4 years of my career, I ran the Evergreen Lake House. I will tell you right now, there is a giant difference between any event and a wedding. Weddings got out of control. We used to have to, people would sit out in front of the lake house on the last day of every month, because on the first day, we would open that month the next year, and we'd have 40 people in line at 5 a.m. When you're dealing with weddings, and I mean, you can have a birthday party with caterers and DJs and everything. It's a whole different world than having a wedding with DJs and caterers and mother-in-laws and mothers of the bride and all of that. It becomes such a big ordeal for these people that they don't care about rules. They don't, they get blinded, and there is a giant difference between any event and that bride's day. I will tell you right now, with 4 years of experience, it is a nightmare.
Well, okay,
Property
so
damage.
I'm sorry. I don't think we should debate the weddings. I appreciate your input and your experience. I think those are all generalizations. And I think we all know that there are people like that, and there are people who aren't, but I think there is not agreement on that topic, and that's why it's one of these decisions that's still outstanding, and I think we'll have to hash that out. in
Yes,
April.
I agree with that. So are we agreed that, okay, so weddings are up for question on either side. Okay, we agree there's some type of private events on the east side, and we're not in agreement on the west side. That's what that said.
I don't remember separately discussing outdoor events on the west side at all, and maybe that's why it's on this list.
We've made this a separate category because in the context of the Anderson House, if, for example, it was council's wish to demo that house, there might still be a question of, okay, is there some other way that a private
Tent or
exactly could take place? And just making sure we don't miss that in that.
So question on the third bullet, and I think it's beyond this, the decision's still outstanding, what uses. It's really, to me, I would like to know, what would the cost be to renovate the house? What would the cost be to demolish it? And I have actually a vision somewhat of maybe building something else there that would be more appropriate for public education and the principles that we have, where you could have exhibits and a meeting room and something where it could really be used to educate
Like a nature
kids
center.
about, like a nature center type thing. And so to me, this third bullet doesn't answer to me those questions. It's really around what should we do with the main house, and what are the cost impacts of that?
And one of the reasons that I mentioned kind of the work that was done before, and I know that the visioning committee report was in here, the Quincy Farm Committee's unfinished draft of their master plan has not been circulated, and I would like to ask that it be circulated before our April meeting, because there are some great ideas in there, and that talk about, it's very different. They talk about using the garage as a space and with a patio, and not doing that as in the main house at all, and using, or making it a nature center, I think is what they, or is the Anderson House the nature center?
The plan was for the garage to be
Yeah.
a small nature center with the garage doors opening and closing to make it indoor, outdoor.
So, I just want, there has been a lot of thought by a lot of people over 10 years or more. And it doesn't mean that we're stuck with any of it. But I think that, I know us all to be very conscious people. And I think that this input and factoring this input into our thinking, would be very wise.
That makes a lot of sense. Karen, if you don't mind, just one other question on events, so sorry. For April 7th, would it be too much work to get a little bit of benchmarking, or maybe we did it, needs to be refreshed, on similar venues and what events and what parameters they have? Just to get an idea of the Denver community.
Can you give me more yes, we
4 Mile
have
Historic Park, you benchmark some
Only
others,
4 Mile.
I think for other purposes. Is there benchmarking that can be done on what events they allow? Do they have size limitations, liquor? Do they allow weddings, et cetera? It'd just be nice to know, I think.
If we don't have it, we
Not
will do some
dispositive.
research to find it. So we will try and bring back some information.
Okay.
We had some,
It
we had a
won't be
basic table
dispositive.
comparing, some metro area facilities. Whether or not it was targeted at your specific question is, I'm not exactly sure. So if, we'll go back, dust it off, and if we need to do some additional calls, we will try and get one.
I know we have that information for 4 Mile, because
Yeah.
we were there, but I don't know that we have it for 17 Mile.
And if it's a dead end, stop, don't waste your time, but just as another data point. It's not dispositive.
Okay. Do people have, so these are definitely all outstanding questions. Also in that Quincy Farm Committee unfinished report, it has some cost estimates, they're very old now, and it doesn't address necessarily address the Anderson House specifically, I don't remember, but because it talks about doing a different set of projects on the west side, and it provides cost estimates for those projects, but.
Yeah, as Manager Black mentioned earlier, we are prepared to bring cost estimates for different options for the Anderson House at the April 7th conversation.
Okay.
So,
And just another question to me is, that's not on here, is what to do with the Hopkins House. And what I mean by that is, should we, I was thinking it might be interesting to renovate it in the style of 1898, to have a place that looked like it was at that time, not a modern kitchen in there, but an old kitchen, and where people could see what it looked like back when it was built. And I don't know, so I think there's still some questions around how we renovate. I think we're in agreement that we're going to renovate that house, that it's on the historic register, but how it's renovated and how it's used, I think, is open for discussion.
Yeah, and again, that committee suggests it be a museum. Go ahead.
So I did have a question, sorry, on the last slide.
Oh, yep, go ahead.
So when you say will require accessible restrooms, and we want to be able to use the Hopkins House, is that allowed to change that house to have accessible restrooms in that house? Do you know?
Yes, putting an accessible restroom in that house would be quite difficult
Okay.
because of the way, basically to ramp into that house would take a lot. It would be a lot, and there's not a lot of room to build an accessible restroom
the door
unless
widths
you
and all that
lose, unless you lose part of that dining room that's right next to it.
Right.
I think our recommendation would be, it's probably going to be cheaper to either add accessible restrooms in the garage, for example, which we stubbed sewer out to when we did when we redid the main house's sewer years ago, we stubbed sewer out to the garage.
Okay.
Anticipating that possibility.
Okay.
So that would be staff's recommendation, would be to do something else.
Okay, and then a further question, can we have events in the Hopkins House if we don't have accessible restrooms? No, we cannot, right? I mean, it
I'm
wouldn't be
gonna look
accessible
at
to go
Paul.
across the
There-
bridge.
There,
There are
there are
issues with that.
certain exceptions to certain historic buildings.
Okay.
That would be part, if we did a feasibility study, for example, whether we could bring it up to code or how that is possible, or if it's required, would all be part of that process.
Okay, thanks.
I think, and one comment I just wanted to make, and I think this is important, and staff's going to work hard, and they are working hard, and they're going to come up with as reasonable cost estimates as they can. But they're not going to be, my guess is they're going to be more detailed than some of us need, and they're not going to be as detailed as maybe others want to see. But I'm going to encourage my colleagues that they're going to bring the best they have. That's the information that you're going to have available. And in my view, that will inform your decision as to you're voting for this or you're not voting for it. But as opposed to, no, this isn't good enough. And it can
It'd
be.
be order of magnitude.
I guess that would say you vote no because you don't have.
How many zeros exactly? Right. All right.
Well, Mayor, are you asking whether or not there are things to add to the list of this slide?
Yes.
I guess my comment to you is, it seems like we still are unclear about, we're focusing with, Hopkins House and Anderson's House. We're talking about private events, but we're not talking about what kind of other events, in general, we want to see happening, particularly on the west side. So do we feel we've got that hammered out pretty, I
You
mean,
mean
we
like
do have.
programming or?
Pardon me?
Do you mean programming or?
Well, no, I think that, again, that's going to follow within the context of our educational mandate that we have before that. I'm talking more about, I don't know, I mean, would you have a, 4th of July party there that the city would sponsor? Or, I mean, that's in a party type of atmosphere.
Sure,
but-
and so if we go back on
City, I think
what we
city
agreed to,
events.
it does say city events are appropriate on both
On both
sides.
sides of the farm.
Okay, I mean, I guess that
We're trying to put everything into one of three buckets.
city,
City,
non-private,
city programming by whoever our partner is, and private.
yeah, okay.
And private could be things that individual citizens want to do, or maybe that a nonprofit might want to come and do.
Right.
Right, okay.
Okay. I think then, I think we've gone through that. I know that a few things have been added, and I think you've recorded that, so I think we're good there.
Just,
Oh, yeah.
one thought that comes to me, just as you said that, is on the private events, whether it would need to be a Cherry Hills resident. that
Like a
would,
sponsorship type model or.
Yeah, right, like if I was trying to get on Torrey Ponds to play golf, you have to be a resident of the city of San Diego to get that tee time, right? So, I mean, a similar concept, is that something that we would want to make it open to the broader community or just to citizens of Cherry Hills?
So that would fall under the second bullet when we get into that discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What kind of,
Yeah, I think that's
Limitations,
really,
yeah.
that one, maybe, frankly, we're going to look to our city attorney and assistant city attorney for the legality of having limited events, so.
Yeah.
But I do think it's important.
I will say I will have to do some background research there.
Yeah.
Go through and check that wording.
I certainly know off the top of my head, there's a lot of different facilities that are city-owned or sponsored that have a different fee schedule
yes.
for residents.
Beginning of next steps. So this is where we are once again. So we will plan to bring the visioning committee report, the Quincy Farm Committee draft master plan, cost estimates, basically everything we can associated with the property, what similar properties do, to you all for that April 7th meeting. So we're expecting that to be quite a lively discussion. And as part of that, again, we'll be presenting 3 or 4 sort of pre-baked visions for council to consider to make it a little bit easier for folks to consider different options against the other. And we're not anticipating council is just going to vote for Vision A and that's going to be it. We're doing that also to be able to use those to narrow down. So maybe council likes this part of C and this much of D, and we will combine those for the next meeting and bring you what we hope will be a more final vision at that May 5th meeting.
And just real quick, Manager Black, I'm so sorry to interrupt. The themes that we will present to you, we are still keeping them at a fairly high level, right? We are not attempting to get into okay, we're defining, if it's after 5 o'clock on the west side, a small event is 20 people. And then on the east side, before 5 o'clock is 25. It's not at that level of detail, right? We're sort of doing Monty Hall here, right? Door A, B, or C kind of thing, right? And so we're keeping it broad, and we think from there, and we feel fairly confident. I was going to say fairly confident. We think we have heard from council what the critical path questions are. The Anderson House, how to do the Hopkins House, and especially, events, just broadly, weddings or otherwise, especially on the west side. So that's the kind of detail that we're going to focus on. We're not going to get into, like we did in the last one on May 20th, with the matrix of all the different uses. That sort of got us sidetracked. So we're going to try and keep it at a broad thematic level. And then the next one, we would then get more detailed.
On, when would that be? That's what I was going to ask is, that's not going to be May 5th. That's going to be later in the summer or?
I don't think we'll have 25 people for this and 20 people for that on May 5th.
Right.
But we would probably get into more details to give it so that we have a vision that council's agreed upon that can serve as the basis for the annual plans at future dates. And in those, so we'll have to then come back and create some rules and regulations and all these things. I'm sure we would bring that back to council for consideration, but it would all stem out of the vision document.
Yeah, I was just trying to set some
Yeah, yeah.
expectations. I wasn't asking for a deadline.
Okay.
Just a practical
Yeah.
question. For the 7th, will that be a study session, both so there's dedicated time or time bound, to your point, or during regular session?
I think it's going to be during the regular meeting.
Okay.
And I think we should bring our pajamas and our,
We have the CIRSA training during the study session.
Okay.
And just to make sure everybody's on their best behavior for the conversation. No, we didn't plan it that way.
yeah.
But then we also have a subdivision variance discussion that night as well. We may flip the order of those two a little out of the ordinary and end with Quincy Farm as opposed to making an
probably
applicant sit in the
advisable.
audience while you have that
Yeah.
conversation.
Okay.
That's all I have, unless there's any last questions.
Okay, well, that sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah, just
for
thank
that.
you.
It was a good review, and like I said, I encourage everyone. I know the vision document was part of this packet. They'll send out the draft. I mean, it is definitely not completed, but kind of the areas that are relevant to the discussion we're having now are pretty well fleshed out. Okay. The next item is Public Hearing Resolution 6, 2026, approving a minor subdivision to create 2 lots from 1 lot at 1 Cherry Hills Park Drive. And I believe I need a motion. Counselor McGuire has it.
Allow me. I move to continue Resolution 6, Series 2026, a resolution by the City Council of the City of Cherry Hills Village to March 17, 2026 City Council meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Any
Yes.
opposed? Okay, that will be continued to March 17th. Moving on to reports. Sorry, that snuck up on me. Let me fish out my very lengthy list of items to report upon. But there were so many that I did have to start writing them down because I was afraid I would forget. The last Metro Mayor's Caucus meeting was actually very interesting. The whole overarching topic was around recycling and sustainability and kind of given our discussions during the budget process and et cetera, et cetera, there were a few things mentioned during the Metro Mayor's Caucus meeting that I felt were very quickly actionable and things that maybe our city would be interested in considering. I've mentioned them to city manager. One of them is that there was evidently a bill passed in 2022 that all recycling is going to be provided, well, I'm going to use the word free, and then I'm going to explain, starting in July of this summer. The state is moving to a system where packagers, people who package products, are going to start paying a fee that goes into a fund that is managed by a nonprofit controlled by those packagers. So they kind of run their own show. Obviously, that fee is going to get passed on to the consumer, so it's not free. However, I think that, paying a little bit more to recycle a product that if you're consuming that product, maybe that sounds okay. That's my personal opinion. So that's one thing to know, is that if you're currently paying for recycling pickup or something like that, in theory, you should no longer be charged for that starting this summer. Those providers, recycling service providers, will be reimbursed by this nonprofit entity that has been created. The second item, that there was a presentation that was really interesting, and I think it's already been passed along to Jay. There was a company that makes an asphalt additive that's made from the type of plastic that's used in those plastic grocery bags, and lots of other types of bags, medical device bags when they've been sterilized, and they turn these plastics into this asphalt additive that evidently is, it's a unicorn. It's less expensive and it lasts longer, and so I thought that might be a way, as the city manager said tonight, it doesn't necessarily make us more sustainable, but it does put to good use, tons and tons of plastic that's sitting in some warehouse somewhere. There was also a presentation from Recycle Colorado, and they talked about two different things. One, of course, was composting, and I know that's been an ongoing discussion, and composting services are picking up. For a long time, there weren't any even available in Cherry Hills Village. Now there are. I threw out an idea. This is just an idea, but would be interested to see what the council thinks. A lot of the issue around trash collection and the reason that it's so problematic for municipalities to be single hauler trash service people is the volume of customer complaints. And, so we obviously wouldn't do it ourselves. We would contract with someone. But when people's trash gets missed or when they're upset about something, they call the city, and it just kind of puts the city in a difficult middleman position. So I actually, rather than offering like a citywide composting service, like some people, Denver, et cetera, have tried to do, I had an idea that maybe we could offer a recreation reimbursement style program to encourage people, right, and have no other details about it than just that nugget of an idea. And so maybe that's something that we could look into. I know we all talked about budgeting for what we thought was a pretty expensive study, and that we'd much rather spend that money on something that was actually implementing something. And so maybe this is a way that we could do that. And then last but not least, Recycle Colorado also had their presentation covered recycling construction materials, particularly lumber. And I'm sure it's probably for much bigger projects, but, and it's not something that I see the city requiring, but if we could, the thought was maybe if we had a one-page, here are all the different companies in the metro area, these recycle lumber, these will take these, and whenever you get a demolition permit, you get this resource sheet, because I think there are people who are tearing down some pretty big houses, and I think people would like to do the right thing, just it's very difficult to know, where to go. And so if we could provide that as a resource, I think that would be nice. So that was it for the kind of recycling sustainability from the Metro Mayor's Caucus. I also just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge and offer the council's sympathies to our city attorney, Kathy Guckenberger, whose mother-in-law passed away this past week. And we wish her and her family all of the best. And I'm sure all of our thoughts are with them at this time. I was also made aware that one of our longtime residents and a former city council member and art commission chair in Columbus was in a very serious car accident in Arizona. And her family has asked not to contact, but it sounds like it was very serious. I don't have any details, but yes, so let's all send her our strength, kind of virtual, through the airwaves. And then in terms of the legislative update, obviously the Homes Act, I testified on that the Tuesday before the same day as our last meeting. It did pass on a party line vote, and it will be heard in the Senate committee coming up, I think, March 3rd. There's also a new bill that's even worse, House Bill 261114, and I think Director Workman will talk about it in more detail, but that bill basically says that the minimum lot size, so the greatest that your minimum lot size can be, is 2,000 square feet.
44,000.
44,000.
And I don't know if we have any Succession fans here, but in the words of Logan Roy, General Assembly, you are not serious people.
Yeah, I mean, that is, there are so many issues with that, but yes. And there are a slew of other things around, bills around information sharing that are coming out of, concerns over ICE, et cetera, but unfortunately will also really impact law enforcement's ability to track down criminals using their location data. And there have been lots of cases recently that have been solved by using that data. And so I think that's a scary thought. And then the last one that I'll just throw out there has not been a bill introduced, but there was a comment in a Denver Post article that, there's some efforts at tax reform, and there are a variety of proposals floated. And evidently, there will be an attempt to bring back property tax legislation that is a land-only based tax assessment. So the value of the improvement on the land would no longer be taxed. And that, as you might imagine, sounds like it would have an enormous fiscal impact in Cherry Hills Village. And unfortunately, this was Jared Polis's idea 2 years ago, so I don't believe if it presents itself, I think it is worrisome. So, all right, that's my report. We'll start down on this end. Councilor Fisher.
I don't have a report, thanks.
I do have a report. We had the our Region 9 Opioid Abatement Council meeting last Thursday. These lawsuits continue to be settled across the United States, so we are going to get an additional $3 million to Region 9 Council, and the funding will continue till 2041, from 2038 to 2041. And we are making decisions around how to spend that money. We've recently allocated some money towards prevention, so you may see some public messaging around prevention and the link that's now been documented between THC use and opioid abuse. And some of that messaging may be out there. And in light of that, one other bill that I think is bad for the community, and the chief of police may take note of this, is that there is a bill to allow THC and alcohol to be combined. It's called the hemp beverage bill, and to be sold in restaurants and bars across Colorado. So I don't know whether that will pass, but certainly would create some more intoxicating driving, I think. So I had something else, but I've forgotten what it is. But anyways, I'll stop with those.
Thank you. Counselor McGuire.
I don't have a report. I wanted to let people know, and city manager, and I think Emily is already aware of this. I'm going to miss both April meetings, but I'm going to miss the Quincy Farm meeting, and I don't think I'm going to be somewhere where I can Zoom in. I think I can Zoom in for the other meeting in April, but not for the first one. So my plan is, that I discussed with Chris, our city manager, was to meet with Manager Black before I leave, and I'll distribute my input to everybody so that you at least have it, whether you care to, abide by it. It's up to you. But I do promise to at least give you my thoughts on everything. So,
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Holland.
No report, just like to thank Emily and the Land Preserve for the hard work that they've been doing on Quincy Farm, and all staff that have been involved. Jay, it continues to be a labor of love, but a lot of labor. So thank you very much.
Counselor Eber.
Just very quick note that tomorrow night is the next Dr. Cog meeting. I'll report again after that. And then on the fun category, if anybody wants to come wander around our neighborhood, specifically the intersections of Parkway and Cherry Lane, sometime late afternoon, we have wild turkeys in our neighborhood. That in the springtime we had 6, now we have 3, but they are there and usually wandering house to house, in the streets, just hanging out for anybody to come watch them. They are not friendly. So
Did you see that?
be forewarned.
Did you see the internet video of the UPS delivery driver who was like getting attacked by the wild turkeys?
Oh, I have
And he,
not
like,
seen that,
Makes a
but-
mad dash, throws the package on the stoop, and then runs back to the van.
I see the former Mayor Chrisman, I don't know if they make it as far over to your house, but they kind of tend to be in the northern half. I think they kind of live up in that Volunteer Park area. But come watch and enjoy some of our wildlife.
Counselor Heller.
Just a couple quick things. The Centennial Noise meeting did occur between our last and this meeting. Nothing remarkable. Continues to be a lot of focus on noise around the training boxes, particularly out east in Elbert County. A little bit of Levere's now as well, so kind of a uptick. Overall noise is down. They attribute that, even though aircraft takeoffs and landing, including touch and goes, are stable, if not up a little bit. Attribute that to newer, quieter aircraft. The conference in Las Vegas is coming up in about a month. I'll be attending, along with several others. And that's about it on noise. The other item just was a thank you to code enforcement. I've been out on my bike a lot in this crazy warm weather. I think more biking in January and February than I've ever had. Been here a long time. And code enforcement was out there. It was good to see enforcing and just having a presence. So thank you.
Great, thank you. All right,
Mayor?
yeah.
Can I just follow up? One of the things that I think I saw on one of the things that crossed my path was that I think it's June 5th is Run the Runways at Centennial Airport. And if you are interested, they have, I'm not sure if it's, I think it's a 5K. And it hasn't gone out for official registration yet, but keep your eyes open. And I know when I was attending the committee meetings, they basically made spots for people who wanted to do it. So if you're interested,
Does it involve running?
not if it's not,
All right, city manager.
I will let the director start. Paul?
Just to follow up on what Mayor Brown had to say, the state legislature is certainly active on a variety of fronts. Consistent with their previous behavior, there is an assault on home rule authority and local jurisdictions. Not only the home bill that's in the Senate for hearing and the cap on the maximum lot size at 2,000 square feet, which is incredibly small. That's not even a postage stamp. There's also a bill currently in the legislature that would require local jurisdictions as part of the building permit process to ensure that all contractors and subcontractors have workers' comp insurance. That would be a major change, not only for us, but most municipalities. We certainly, from a staffing level, are not equipped to deal with that. So we would certainly have to explore options on how or if we would meet that state requirement. Additionally, to my knowledge, it hasn't been introduced yet, but I have heard talk that there's a bill that will be introduced at some point that will, I'll say, strip at least some of the regulation local jurisdictions have over splitting residential lots, so that basically allowing residential lots to be split without the municipal approval,
So a 2,000 square foot lot can be split.
without city approval.
And without potentially, as we were just discussing, the state is contemplating eliminating the ability of cities to require access. So if you have a big block and you wanted to put 2,000 square foot lots on it, if we required that every lot have frontage, it limits the amount of lots that you could get on a lot, on a block. So they're contemplating prohibiting cities from requiring frontage, access to right-of-way. It would all have to be handled through some sort of private easement process. So that theoretically on a typical old-school Denver 660 by 330 block, you're talking, trying to do the math, way too many lots that don't have access. Think about the emergency service implications. Think about utilities. I mean, it's just beyond.
Yeah,
Beyond.
it makes your head explode. It's such a bad idea.
well, and the standard kind of wash park lot is about 4,800 feet, I think. So imagine a half of a wash park lot being the standard.
Yeah.
So state legislature is busy. I'm continuing to monitor that. I know the mayor's continuing. I know some of you are continuing to monitor it. We'll continue to do so and see where these things go. That's it for me.
Our 2026 tree planting program kicks off this Friday. So at 9 a.m., we'll post the form. Residents can order up to 2 trees for their house at cost, basically. So it's a great program. It gets quite competitive some years. So if you are interested in a specific tree, we recommend that you get your form in basically at 9:05 on Friday.
And I think we were talking about it with the mayors, go to lunch. I think it's Sheridan. It's either Sheridan or Centennial. I think it's Sheridan. They actually go out and plant the tree for you. They deliver it to your house and they dig the hole and they plant the tree.
We don't need to speak of that ever again.
We will deliver. We deliver them
Okay.
around Arbor Day, but planting is
Yeah, okay. We leave that to the homeowner. Director Gold.
Just to follow up on Mayor Brown's sustainability. So city manager had given us that information, and my staff was at an asphalt conference here last week. Had a good talk with that recycling company. They are going to actually come out and walk the streets with Mr. Bernanzoni and see if there's any good places where we can do some test products and projects in some smaller areas to see what it's all about.
Yeah, I mean, we don't use nearly as much of that stuff as cities bigger than us, but I mean, hey, if
Yeah.
it's something we can do to help the planet.
Yeah. And we're excited to, we've had a bid out for hot in-place asphalt recycling. And when we bring that contract to you for approval, we're going to ask the contractor come in and talk to you about the sustainability that that product is, because it's the footprint reduction is about half of normal asphalt production. So again, we're looking at those sustainability things and what we can do as a city.
Great, thank you. Director Newman.
No update, thank you.
Thank you. City Clerk Gillespie.
As mentioned, we are planning on having that council training. We're looking at April 7th, starting at 5 p.m., so we have a little bit longer than a typical study session. I just wanted to review what we're going to ask them to go over with council to make sure that everyone's still on the same page for that. So council best practices, common traits among effective councils, tools for council self-evaluation, and case studies and trends for ethical best practices. Is that still good?
Sure, sounds great.
I will just give you a sneak preview for both CML and CIRSA. The self-evaluation, they both have expressed a desire to need to research that. So,
Okay,
yeah, so
not a common trend in.
maybe not something they provide guidance on. That doesn't mean doesn't happen, but they haven't presented that as much. Is that fair to say, Laura? Yeah.
But will it include sort of the best practice of establishing a code of conduct?
We can certainly include that on the list, yes.
I mean, that, because you have to have something like that in order to self-evaluate, right? I mean, you have to
think we-
have.
Don't we have a code of conduct?
I've never seen it.
Is it
Well, I
not
think
in
that-
our policies?
I
I
think
thought it was.
best
but-
practices. I think best practices,
I'd have to look, okay.
include a lot of team building and establishing that code of conduct together, right? So regardless of whether there's an old one that none of us have seen. I guess I was just thinking that, how do you do a self-evaluation if you don't have something that you're evaluating yourself against? So you have to establish what your agreed upon norms of meeting norms are. Does that make sense?
Hey, Chris.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just if you're not able to find anything relative to self-evaluation for public entities, then was that the National Association of Corporate Directors has a lot of information. Some of it's not going to apply. Delaware law on discharging your risk management responsibilities, but a bunch of it does. How you get along, communications amongst. So you might look at that as another source.
Well, I'm hoping we don't have to look at that. I'm hoping that CML or CIRSA, because they're the ones who are asking, they'll just need to do some additional research, is all they're saying.
That's another source if they're
Yeah,
interested.
sure.
Just one quick update, the registration for this year's Citizens Police Academy opens Monday. As you know, it's become quite a popular program. It's expected to fill probably within the first 2 or 3 days. So generally speaking, first come, first serve. So early bird gets the worm on that. Thanks.
Great, thank you. City Attorney.
I do not have anything for you all this afternoon, or this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. And City Manager.
Yeah, I just have a couple of things real quick. I too share staff's condolences for Kathy and her family. It's always tough. Also, I don't know if council picked up on this, but apparently there's such a thing as an asphalt conference if you all want to attend next year. Sounds like a real party. Council may have remembered some discussions that I've brought up with many of you regarding specifics related to the Highline Canal and the change in ownership from Denver Water to Arapahoe County and the process that Arapahoe County is going through to become a more effective administrator of its property now. And the process has had some ups and downs, and we are still very early in that process. Director Goldie and I had the opportunity to attend Arapahoe County Board of County Commissioners meeting, study session, and I was asked to speak along with the city manager from Centennial and Greenwood Village regarding our perspectives in an effort to inform the county on some of the impacts or issues that we might have with some of their overall approaches that they've expressed so far. I will just say I think that remains an ongoing conversation, meaning I wouldn't say that there are necessarily all the issues were resolved. So I do think it's trending in the right direction, and so I'm hopeful. But I would say from a city perspective, from a Cherry Hills Village perspective, there are still some processes and costs and aspects of the way the county is thinking about it that still need adjustments. Is that, I tried to be as politically
Diplomatic.
sensitive as possible. Other than that, that's the only report I have.
Great, thank you. All right, well, if there's nothing else, we will stand adjourned at 7:57 PM.